The Pilgrim Story, Part 2, The First Thanksgiving. The Pilgrim Story is one of America's most important and most loved founding stories. This dramatic tale of courage and perseverance in the face of hardship and danger has inspired generations.
In this episode, we will learn about the encounter with Indians, the dreadful first winter, and the first Thanksgiving.
This story is based on the true account of events as recorded in the book by William Bradford, Bradford's History of Plymouth Plantation. On December 6, 1620, we went out in the shallop again with 10 men, along with some of the mariners from the Mayflower. Our mission was to explore deeper into the Bay of Cape Cod. The weather was very cold, so cold that the spray from the ocean falling on our coats froze so hard we all appeared to have been glazed.
Men, daylight has been spent crossing the bay. When we reach the shore, it will be nearly dark, so we'll unload our supplies and then build a barricade out of logs and branches. After that's done, we'll set some lookouts and try to get some sleep.
At dawn, we awoke and had a time of prayer, then prepared for breakfast. Some of the men started carrying things down to the boat. They carried some of the muskets down to the shore and laid them on the bank near the water, and then came back up for breakfast.
Men! Indians! Indians!
Look out!
Grab your muskets, men! Don't shoot until you can take good aim.
The Indians are trying to get through the barricade!
Some men ran out from the barricade with coats of mail on and swords in their hands, and were able to recover the muskets that were laying on the beach. One Indian stood under a tree and fired off 3 arrows. One of our men took careful aim at him and fired. The bark of the tree and splinters of wood flew about the Indian's head, and he gave an extraordinarily loud shriek. And away ran all of them. And thus it pleased God to give us deliverance from our enemies, for not one of us had been hit by an arrow or hurt in any way. However, several coats which had been hanging in the barricade had been shot through and through with many arrows.
I guess this will be my Sunday coat now.
Why is that?
It's holy!
After that first encounter, we set sail in the shallop, and it soon began to snow and rain. The wind increased, and the sea became very rough.
The rudder just broke!
There are oars in the bottom of the boat. 2 of you men, steer the boat with the oars. Storm's getting worse. Pull in the sails.
Look out! The mast just broke! No, the sail just fell overboard.
Row with all your strength, men. I see a place where we might land the shallop.
By God's providence, we did not drown, but we had much difficulty reaching the shore. We were able to start a fire in spite of the wet wood and strong wind, and were most thankful for the blazing fire because the wind shifted and it froze hard that night. The next morning dawned fair and sunny, and we all thanked God for His mercy. We sounded the harbor and found it deep enough for large ships such as the Mayflower. Later, while exploring the land, we found several cornfields, a little running brook of fresh water, and an area that would be good for building cabins. At last we had found a fine location for the new colony. We returned to the Mayflower with the good news.
This is the best location we can find, and with the lateness of the season, I'm quite certain that you are as happy as I am to accept it as our new home.
So on December 16th, 1620, the Mayflower sailed across the bay and safely arrived in what is now called Plymouth Harbor. On Christmas Day, we began work on the very first building in Plymouth Colony, which would be for shared use and to store our goods. In these hard and difficult beginnings, there was some discontent voiced among some of the people. Some did not want to abide by the Mayflower Compact they had signed, so there were rumblings of mutiny.
Rumble, rumble, rumble. Mutiny, mutiny, mutiny.
But these were overcome by the wisdom and patience of Governor John Carver, and by the majority which supported each other faithfully. However, we did not anticipate that the biggest trial and test of all still lay before us. Winter arrived with its fierce winds and snow. Our people were exposed to cold, wind, rain, and snow as we hurried to build log cabins in which to take shelter. Then the worst news yet reached our ears.
Fire! Fire!
What's burning?
Our meeting house is burning. It's going up in flames and there's no way to stop it.
The building burned completely to the ground. The people that were living there were forced to move back into the Mayflower. To make matters worse, it was at this time that sickness began to spread among the Pilgrims. Many of the Pilgrims already had scurvy due to their long voyage, poor nutrition, and high salt diet from the preserved food.
They needed warm houses and the other comforts they had left behind. The exposure to the cold, wet winter weather prevented any recovery from their sickness.
In just a few months' time, half of our people died. January and February were especially brutal. Sometimes 2 or 3 people a day died, so that of our group of 102, scarcely 50 remained alive. During this time of distress, there were only 6 or 7 people that were well enough to care for the sick. The few healthy individuals who cared for the sick and the dying are to be highly commended. At the risk of their own health, they fetched wood, made fires, changed beds, washed many disgusting clothes, and did all the necessary things that queasy stomachs cannot even endure to hear. Moreover, they did it willingly and cheerfully, truly showing God's love to their friends and brethren. During this heartbreaking time, the Indians were also a continual concern.
Look, that Indian is back, just hanging around again.
You have to keep an eye on them. Last week they stole all of John's tools while he was away for just a minute.
Around the 16th of March, 1621, a certain Indian came up to us and spoke in broken English. We could hardly understand him, but we were amazed that there was an Indian that even knew a little English.
Me, Somerset, come from east. Fisherman in big boat, teach Somerset English.
Somerset was valuable to us in acquainting us with many things about this place. Most importantly, he told us of another Indian named Squanto, a native of this area who had been in England and could speak even better English. Somerset returned several days later with a few other Indians.
We bring back tools taken.
Thank you for returning our tools.
We come in 5 days with great Sachem, Chief Massasoit. We bring Squanto. He speak good English.
5 days later, as promised, Chief Massasoit came with some of his friends and with Squanto. After some friendly entertainment, we gave him some gifts and worked out a peace treaty that stated that we would not harm each other or steal from each other, and if any person broke the treaty, they would be returned to their own people for punishment. This peace treaty was in effect for many years and was continually honored by both the Indians and the Pilgrims.
Other explorers that came to the New World took advantage of the Indians, but the Pilgrims respected the Indians and their different culture, language, and traditions.
After the meeting, Massasoit returned to his own place about 40 miles away. However, Squanto stayed with us and was our interpreter. He was a special gift sent from God for our good. To have someone who knew how to grow crops and hunt and fish in this area and spoke English was a blessing beyond our expectation.
Squanto, how did you come to learn English?
Squanto was captured here by slave traders who planned to sell Squanto to slave owners in Spain. But Squanto got away and made his way to England. Squanto was hired by a gentleman who wanted to explore this area. Squanto make peace between Indians and the English.
With spring now approaching, the deaths among the Pilgrims began to come to an end. Many of those that were sick recovered, and this put new life into everyone. But it was the Lord who upheld us. Many pilgrims felt that God had been preparing them for a tragedy such as this, because they had already endured such a very difficult life, some from their youth. In April of 1621, the Mayflower began her voyage back to England. The reason she had stayed so long was that she was needed to protect the Pilgrims from the Indians and to give them shelter from the harsh weather.
Spring is here and the weather is warm. Let's plant some corn.
Unless you set fish in ground with corn, the corn will not come to anything. I will show you where to catch fish.
We sowed some of the seed we had brought from England, such as wheat and peas, but it did not produce anything, either because of the poor soil or some defect in the seed.
In April, another tragedy occurred when our governor, John Carver, became very ill while planting corn on a hot day. He died just a few days later. This was a great discouragement to many, as he had been our leader through the most difficult times we had faced. I, William Bradford, was chosen to be governor in his place. The summer had produced many healthy crops, and we now began to gather in the harvest from the land. All of us were now well recovered in health and strength. All summer there had been no lack of food. Many wrote letters to their friends in England, boasting of the plenty here, and they were not false but true reports. Our harvest now being gathered, it was fitting that we put aside our work and joined together in a celebration of God's great blessings. I sent out 4 men to hunt for fowl so that we might all gather and rejoice together in a special manner. In 4 days they killed as many ducks, geese, and turkeys as would feed the entire colony for almost a week. During the celebration, many of the Indians joined us. The great chief Massasoit came along with some 90 of his men. For 3 days we entertained them and feasted. They brought 5 deer to the feast, which they presented to Captain Miles Standish and me. We know that it will not always be so plentiful as it is at this time, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from want that we often wish others could also be partakers of our plenty.
What a wonderful celebration that first Thanksgiving must have been. In 1789, President George Washington became the first president to proclaim a Thanksgiving holiday.
However, it wasn't until 1941 that President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed a bill officially making the 4th Thursday in November the national holiday of Thanksgiving Day.
Of the 102 pilgrims that set out from England, plus 2 babies that were born thereafter, just 53 remained alive to celebrate that first Thanksgiving.
The Mayflower had arrived at Cape Cod in November of 1620. No other ships arrived until after that first Thanksgiving celebration in November of 1621. The religious persecution in England was now just a distant memory. The perilous voyage of the Mayflower was behind us, and the time of sickness and death thankfully was over. The harvest had been gathered, and we had celebrated our great plenty alongside the people we once feared. In the many troubles and sorrows we had passed through, truly the Lord upheld us, and we have every confidence that the Lord will continue to uphold us in whatever lies ahead. Thanks for watching the Bible Brick Channel. If you liked this video, please click like and subscribe below. And check out our other videos. You can find links to all our videos on BibleBrick.com. That's Bible-Brick.com.